It was 12:17 a.m. when the billionaire stepped quietly into the dimly lit guest room corridor of his mansion, the marble floors cold under his polished shoes. The entire estate was asleep, except for him and the young girl who didn't yet know he was watching. Her name was Tiana, 14 years old, daughter of the Maid, and the only child allowed to stay on the property tonight. He stood at the edge of the hallway, half in shadow, holding a small velvet-lined box in his hand. Without warning, he pressed the secret panel beside the wall. The faint click echoed. The floor beneath Tiana's feet shifted slightly. The corridor lights flickered. The billionaire tightened his jaw, his eyes fixed on the girl standing alone under the chandelier. She turned, startled by the strange sensation. "Sir?" she whispered, clutching the bedtime tray she was asked to deliver. But the billionaire didn't respond. Instead, he stepped forward and placed the box on the floor in front of her. "Open it," he ordered softly. Tiana looked at him with confusion and a little fear. She hesitated, then kneeled, opened the box, and drew in a sharp breath. Inside lay a gold stopwatch already ticking backwards. "Tiana," he said, voice low, "if you can figure out why this clock is counting down before it reaches 0, everything in your life will change." The timer flashed. 1 minute and 27 seconds. 1 minute and 26 seconds. 1 minute and 25 seconds. Tiana looked up, eyes wide. "What happens when it reaches 0? He leaned closer. "That," he whispered, "is what we're about to find out." The light bulb above them flickered one last time. Then the sound of a soft beep echoed through the corridor like a heartbeat. The clock hit 1 minute and 10 seconds. Silence. Then a distant door slammed somewhere deep within the mansion. Tiana's hand trembled, and before she could react, the hallway plunged into darkness. Only the red glow of the ticking clock remained. We share powerful stories that uncover hidden truths and challenge perspectives. Subscribe to stay updated, share to keep others safe, and comment where you're watching from. It had not always been this way. Before the testing, the darkness, the hidden panels and cryptic clocks, there was just a story of a kind old woman and a wealthy family she served with grace. Her name was Margaret Avery, 68 years old, born in Little Rock, Arkansas, raised by her grandmother who taught her that no matter how poor you are, your heart must never be poor in kindness. Margaret moved to New York in her 20s, working several small jobs until she landed work at the Harrington estate, caring for the family of one of the richest men in the country, Nicholas Harrington, a billionaire tech mogul known for his cold brilliance. He owned aerospace companies, satellite networks, and homes on 4 continents, but it was said he never owned a smile. He paid well but spoke little. He rarely looked at staff directly, and it was whispered among employees that he didn't believe in emotions, only outcomes. Margaret, however, believed firmly in empathy. Even with arthritis slowing her down, she still bent her knees to scrub floors no robot was allowed to touch. Her hands were rough, her steps slow, but her spirit remained unbroken. And every night before leaving, she would check on her daughter, Tiana, who waited in a small rented apartment downtown. But 3 months ago, Tiana gave her a reason to smile again. She had ranked top of her grade in school, dreaming of becoming an aerospace engineer. Ironically, in the same industry her mother's boss dominated. Margaret was proud but also fearful. She knew people sometimes judged before they listened, especially when the dreamer was young, black, and from a family that cleaned other people's homes. Then something happened that changed everything. Margaret slipped on the mansion steps one icy morning, injuring her hip. She was told to rest for weeks, but instead of sending her away, Nicholas Harrington surprised the whole staff. He allowed her to stay on the estate temporarily, in one of the smaller guest cottages. Only then did he find out she had a daughter. He approved Tiana staying too. No one understood why. Rumors began. Some said he was curious. Others said he simply wanted control over everything that happened on his property. But Margaret knew something was off the first time she caught him watching Tiana with an unreadable expression. Not dangerous, just calculating. Slowly, he began asking Tiana unusual questions about science, logic puzzles, even hypothetical moral dilemmas. Always privately, Margaret worried. Then one day, Harrington said something that chilled her. Your daughter is interesting, he remarked casually, eyes lingering a moment too long. What do you mean, sir? Margaret asked, uneasy. Harrington looked away. People often reveal more when tested under pressure. From that moment, Margaret tightened her hold on Tiana. She prayed over her each night, whispering, "May kindness protect you where strength cannot." The regular days passed with relative calm. Tiana helped tidy the cottage, studied hard, took walks in the courtyard. The staff liked her. Some admired her. She was bright, polite, and treated everyone with respect. Even the billionaire's young son, Ethan, 17, once offered to show her his workshop. But Nicholas watched from a distance, and every now and then, Tiana felt like the mansion walls were listening. The night before everything changed, Margaret had a dream that she was back home in Arkansas, watching her granddaughter plant seeds. In the dream, storm clouds gathered, and when she tried to shield the child, the wind blew harder. She woke in sweat. She wanted to tell Tiana not to move around the mansion late tonight. But Tiana insisted on helping deliver a tray of herbal tea to the private corridor where Nicholas worked late. "It's just tea, Mama. I'll be back in a minute." Margaret watched her walk into the corridor. The clock read 12:05 a.m. She waited. Then everything went quiet. Too quiet. Margaret tried calling her daughter's name but heard nothing. Her heart pounded. Suddenly, faintly, she heard Harrington's voice. "Tiana." She froze. His voice wasn't angry. It was curious. Then she heard Tiana respond softly, "Sir." Margaret grabbed her cane and struggled to reach the corridor. But before she could take a second step, the entire east wing went dark. Lights out. Silence. Then a low electrical hum. That was when she heard something else. A beep, like a countdown. She began to walk faster despite the pain. Then faster, until she was half running. As she approached the corridor, finally, she saw the faint red pulsing glow of a small digital screen through the darkness. 1 minute and 12 seconds. 1 minute and 11 seconds. 1 minute and 10 seconds. And beside it, Tiana, standing alone, her breathing uneven, and Nicholas Harrington standing just feet away, staring at her in silence, his hand behind his back. Margaret tried to call out, but before she could, a sharp mechanical snap sounded overhead. Something began to move above them. The billionaire slowly lifted his hand. Margaret squinted. In his hand now, something new. And just as she recognized what it was, the floor trembled. The clock flashed red. 5 seconds. Margaret cried out. But before she could reach her daughter, the clock hit midnight, and something heavy dropped from the ceiling, right in front of Tiana. Tiana's heart raced so fast it felt like it might burst through her chest. Her eyes were fixed on the object that had fallen from the ceiling. It wasn't heavy in the sense of weight. It was heavy in presence, in the way it made her stomach twist and her hands tremble. A golden stopwatch, identical to the one in the velvet box, lay on the floor, ticking backwards. Nicholas Harrington bent slightly, his fingers hovering above it, as if waiting to see what she would do next. The red glow of the timer reflected off his glasses, giving him a strange, almost otherworldly look. Tiana's breaths came fast, shallow, but she forced herself to kneel, just like he had instructed. Her small hands shook as they hovered above the ticking clock. "Think, Tiana. Why is it counting down?" he asked softly, his voice calm but filled with weight, like a teacher who already knows the answer but wants the student to discover it themselves. Tiana swallowed hard. I don't know, sir," she whispered. She glanced over her shoulder. The hallway was still dark, except for the red glow of the timer. Margaret's cane clattered somewhere behind her, signaling her mother's struggle to reach her. Nicholas straightened and took a step back, giving her space, but his eyes never left her. "Everything has a reason, Tiana. Every second matters. Sometimes, people reveal themselves when they think nobody is watching." Tiana's mind raced. Was this a game? A test? Why now? Why her? Margaret finally reached the corridor, panting, leaning heavily on her cane. "Tiana!" she cried, voice trembling. Don't touch anything, please. But the distance was too far. Tiana couldn't hear her properly over the ticking. The billionaire said nothing. He didn't interfere, didn't stop her. He just watched. And that frightened her more than anything. Tiana took a deep breath and tried to focus. She remembered what her mother always said. Kindness and empathy are stronger than fear. She looked at the clock. The numbers ticked down relentlessly. 00:00:57. 00:00:56. 00:00:55. Then a thought struck her. She picked up the stopwatch carefully, holding it against her chest. She didn't want to break it, but she had to try. Why backwards? She whispered aloud. Nicholas smiled faintly. Because sometimes the world wants to rush you. Sometimes the world wants to see how you handle pressure. Tiana closed her eyes and breathed slowly. Her hand moved over the stopwatch. Instead of just watching it, she felt its weight, the ticking like a pulse. And then, almost instinctively, she spoke quietly. I don't want to fail. I don't want to let fear decide for me. Nicholas nodded slightly. A shadow of approval crossed his face. The stopwatch clicked again. 00:00:40. 00:00:39. Margaret finally reached her daughter and knelt beside her. Tiana, listen to me. It doesn't matter what he wants from you. Remember who you are. Remember kindness. Remember courage. Tiana squeezed her mother's hand. It gave her a strange calmness amidst the fear. Good, Nicholas said softly. Now step forward. Tiana hesitated. Step forward? Into what? The corridor seemed endless. The shadows grew longer, flickering against the marble walls. Suddenly, the sound of a faint whisper drifted through the darkness. Tiana froze. Did you hear that? She asked, voice barely above a whisper. Margaret frowned. Hear what, baby? The whisper came again. It was like wind brushing over her ears, soft but urgent. Choose wisely. Tiana's fingers gripped the stopwatch tighter. She glanced at Nicholas. He didn't speak. His eyes were fixed on her, but there was no sign of malice. Only curiosity. Then the hallway lights flickered, and for a moment, she thought she saw something move across the walls. Shapes like shadows of people she didn't recognize. She blinked and they were gone. Nicholas took another step forward. Every choice has consequences, Tiana. Some are small. Some are life-changing. Tiana's stomach twisted. She thought about her mother, about everything Margaret had taught her, about honesty, courage, and empathy. She thought about the time she had helped other children at school, the time she had shared her lunch with someone who had none, the time she had stood up quietly when someone was being treated unfairly. And then she understood something. The stopwatch wasn't just a timer. It wasn't just a test of knowledge or fear. It was a test of character. She closed her eyes again. Her hand moved instinctively. She pressed a small button at the side of the stopwatch. The ticking stopped. Silence filled the corridor. Nicholas tilted his head slightly. Interesting, he murmured. Very interesting, Tiana. Before she could breathe, the floor trembled beneath them again. A low rumble, like the mansion itself was shaking. Dust fell from the chandelier above. Margaret gripped Tiana's shoulder. Mom, what's happening? Tiana cried. Nicholas didn't answer. He just looked at the ceiling, his eyes narrowing. This is the next part, he said. A sudden crash echoed through the hall. Something heavy had fallen from the ceiling. Tiana froze. Margaret gasped. Nicholas stepped forward with unusual speed, grabbing Tiana's arm and pulling her back. It wasn't just any object this time. A large, ornate mirror had smashed through the ceiling tiles. The glass scattered across the marble, reflecting the red glow of the stopped stopwatch in jagged, horrifying patterns. The shards glittered like fire. And then, just as Tiana began to step backward, one shard shifted. It moved, as if it had weight beyond its size. Tiana's eyes widened in disbelief. Nicholas stepped closer to the mirror shards, leaning over carefully. It's never just about the object, Tiana. It's about how you respond when the world tests you, he said. Margaret knelt beside her daughter, shaking. Tiana, stay calm. Remember, kindness, empathy, courage. But even as she spoke, the floor trembled again. Another distant snap echoed through the mansion. Something in the ceiling shifted. A shadow moved across the broken lights, dark and fast. Tiana felt her heartbeat in her throat. Mom, what's next? Margaret's hands trembled over Tiana's shoulders. I don't know. Just stay with me, baby. Nicholas Harrington, standing silently amidst the chaos, didn't flinch. In fact, there was a strange intensity in his gaze now. Something had changed. The test wasn't just the stopwatch anymore. It wasn't just the falling objects or the shadows. Something larger was coming. Something that none of them could control entirely. And just as Tiana tried to step away from the mirror shards, another loud crash erupted from the far end of the corridor. Dust and fragments flew through the air. The mansion seemed to groan in protest. Tiana clutched her mother. Mom, what's happening? Margaret could only whisper, I don't know. I don't know. The red glow of the stopwatch flickered once, twice. Then it returned to life, ticking again, but this time faster. 00:00:59, 00:00:58, 00:00:57. Tiana felt a cold sweat on her forehead. She looked at Nicholas, whose expression was unreadable, almost satisfied. Margaret tightened her grip on her daughter, heart hammering. Tiana, whatever happens, remember who you are. Remember your heart. The next moment, the floor beneath the edge of the corridor groaned loudly, a long crack running along the marble. A panel beneath the chandelier suddenly split open, revealing a dark void. Tiana froze. She could see the bottom of the void only faintly, like a shadow stretching endlessly. Something about it felt alive, as if the mansion itself was daring her to step forward. Nicholas Harrington's voice cut through the tension. Now, Tiana, the final choice of this test begins. Tiana's eyes widened, her hands trembling. She glanced at her mother, then at the dark abyss revealed beneath the shattered ceiling panels. And at that exact moment, a second shadow flickered across the floor. Faster, closer, impossible to identify. Tiana froze in terror. She couldn't move. She couldn't think. Margaret whispered, Tiana, don't let fear control you. But before Tiana could respond, the shadows shifted again, and the ground beneath her foot cracked. She screamed. The corridor trembled violently. The floor cracked beneath Tiana's feet, sending a shiver through the entire corridor. Dust fell from the chandelier above, and the shards of broken mirror glittered like tiny stars on the marble floor. Tiana's legs wobbled. Her heart raced uncontrollably, and for a moment, it seemed as if the mansion itself were alive, breathing and shifting beneath her. Mom! She screamed, gripping Margaret's hands tightly. It's breaking. Margaret's grip on her daughter was as strong as she could make it, though her arms shook from age and fear. Stay calm, Tiana. Focus. Just focus on the light, on the timer. Tiana glanced at the stopwatch, still glowing red, ticking down with a furious rhythm. 00:00:53, 00:00:52, 00:00:51. Nicholas Harrington didn't move closer. He stood silently a few feet away, his sharp eyes fixed on her, unreadable. But his calmness was terrifying. The way he watched made Tiana feel like she was being measured. Every reaction, every heartbeat, every decision counted. The floor creaked again, and Tiana had to hold her mother tightly to keep from falling. Then a fragment of the ceiling, another piece of plaster, fell just inches from her shoulder. She flinched and Margaret yanked her back. This is insane, Tiana whispered, her voice trembling. Why is he doing this? What is this test? Margaret shook her head, tears brimming. I don't know, baby, but you have to stay brave. Remember what I taught you. You can't let fear decide. Tiana took a deep breath and focused. She reminded herself of every time she had helped others without expecting anything in return. She remembered the little boy at school whose lunch had been stolen, and how she had shared hers with him. She remembered holding the hand of her friend when she was scared in the dark. And she remembered every word her mother had ever whispered about courage and kindness. She straightened her back and held the stopwatch tightly. I'm ready, she whispered. Nicholas tilted his head slightly. Good. Very good, Tiana. But are you ready to make a choice that will change everything? Tiana's stomach tightened. She wanted to ask what he meant, but the floor groaned again, forcing her to stay silent. The mansion seemed to react to the tension, the walls vibrating slightly, the broken chandelier swinging. Dust and fragments of glass rained lightly from above. The abyss under the floor stretched before them, dark and ominous. Tiana's mind raced, trying to think clearly. She had to find a way to move safely. Margaret whispered, "Look at me, Tiana. Trust yourself. Trust your heart. No matter what he's testing, kindness and courage will see you through." Tiana swallowed and nodded. She slowly inched toward the edge of the cracked floor, her hands clutching her mother's. Each step made the cracks widen slightly. Her heart pounded like a drum in her chest. Suddenly, the red glow of the stopwatch flickered and changed. Instead of the steady ticking, the numbers now flashed. 00:00:45, 00:00:44, 00:00:43. Tiana froze. Something about the flashing numbers felt alive, urgent. She stared at the timer. It was almost like it was telling her something, guiding her. She felt a strange surge of understanding. This wasn't just about speed or knowledge. It was about presence, awareness, and keeping calm under extreme pressure. If you're enjoying this story, please subscribe to the channel. Your support keeps us motivated and reminds us that our stories are making a difference in people's lives. Nicholas Harrington's voice cut through the chaos. The world doesn't slow down for anyone, Tiana. It tests you, it shakes you, it threatens to break you. But your strength, your courage, is what defines you. Tiana closed her eyes for a moment, imagining herself as she had in her dreams. Strong, brave, kind. She imagined herself helping others even when scared. Then she opened her eyes and looked at the broken corridor. She noticed a pattern in the cracks of the marble, a kind of path leading safely across the crumbling floor. She whispered, "Mom, I think I see a way." Margaret's eyes widened with relief. "Good. Take it slowly, baby, one step at a time." Carefully, Tiana placed one foot on the safe path, then another. Her hands clutched her mother's for balance. Each step was slow, measured. The mansion groaned with every movement, but somehow, she kept her balance. Nicholas watched silently. His expression was still unreadable, but there was a faint glimmer of something. Approval? Curiosity? It was impossible to tell. The stopwatch ticked down. 00:00:38, 00:00:37, 00:00:36. Tiana reached the edge of the cracked section. For a moment, relief washed over her. She had made it across safely. Margaret hugged her tightly, whispering, "I knew you could do it, baby. I always knew." But just as she exhaled, a sharp snap echoed from above. Dust fell, and the lights flickered again. Something moved in the shadows of the corridor, fast and silent. Tiana froze, feeling a cold shiver crawl down her spine. She couldn't see what it was, but she could feel it. Something lurking, something waiting. Nicholas Harrington stepped forward, his voice calm but firm. "Now, Tiana, the final step." Tiana looked up. A panel in the ceiling had opened wider, revealing a dark void filled with hanging chains and pulleys. The shadows swayed slightly, as if something were moving among them. Her stomach twisted. Margaret whispered, "Tiana, remember, stay calm. You are stronger than fear." Tiana took a deep breath. She could hear her own heartbeat, loud in the tense silence. She looked at Nicholas, then at the dark ceiling, and finally at the stopwatch. It was now ticking faster than ever. 00:00:30, 00:00:29, 00:00:28. She felt her courage solidify inside her. She wasn't just being tested for knowledge. She was being tested for heart, for bravery, for the ability to stay kind and focused even when the world threatened to collapse around her. Then, without warning, one of the chains snapped violently, swinging down from the ceiling. It slammed against the marble floor, sending a shower of sparks and debris into the hallway. Tiana screamed and fell back into Margaret's arms. Nicholas didn't flinch. He watched, calculating, observing, waiting. The red glow of the stopwatch flashed urgently. 00:00:15, 00:00:14, 00:00:13. Tiana scrambled to her feet, her hands shaking. She held the stopwatch tightly, pressing a button instinctively. The ticking stopped again. Silence fell over the corridor, heavy and tense. But the relief was short-lived. A loud creak came from the opposite end of the hall, followed by a low rumble. The floor beneath Nicholas shifted slightly. He stumbled, barely catching himself. Tiana's eyes widened. "Mom! It's not over." Margaret's face was pale. "I know, baby, I know." Suddenly, a second shadow appeared, moving fast across the far wall. It was too quick to identify, but it seemed to be coming closer to them. Tiana's heart pounded. The stopwatch ticked again, faster. 00:00:10, 00:00:09, 00:00:08. The ceiling groaned violently above. Dust and fragments of glass fell. Nicholas's calm composure was replaced by a sharp focus. He moved toward Tiana, his hands out, not threatening, but ready to act. And just as Tiana took a step forward, the floor cracked wider. A large piece of marble shifted, tilting dangerously. Margaret cried out, "Tiana, step back!" But it was too late. The marble tilted fully. The edge of the floor gave way. Tiana screamed as she stumbled toward the void, her mother reaching desperately to catch her. Nicholas Harrington lunged, grabbing Tiana just in time. The world seemed to tilt, dust falling like snow. The stopwatch in her hand glowed brightly, casting a red reflection across their terrified faces. For a moment, everything was frozen. Tiana in Nicholas's arms, Margaret clinging to them both, the crumbling floor beneath. Then, the mansion groaned once more, louder than ever. Something huge fell from the ceiling, striking the marble floor with a deafening crash. The impact sent shards of glass and dust flying everywhere. Tiana's scream echoed, mixing with Margaret's gasp. Nicholas held Tiana protectively, shielding her from the falling debris. And at that exact moment, the stopwatch began to tick backwards faster than ever, its red light flashing wildly. The deafening crash of the falling debris echoed through the corridor, leaving a cloud of dust that made Tiana cough and gag. The red glow of the stopwatch reflected in the shards of glass, casting jagged, eerie patterns across the walls. For a moment, the world seemed suspended in chaos. Tiana clinging to Nicholas, Margaret reaching for them both, the floor trembling beneath their feet. Tiana's heart pounded violently. She felt sweat dripping down her temple, her hands sticky with dust and fragments of broken glass. She wanted to scream, but the noise of the mansion, the groaning beams, and the ticking stopwatch drowned out everything. Nicholas Harrington tightened his grip around her waist. "Stay calm, Tiana. Focus on the path ahead, not the danger behind you." Tiana swallowed hard, trying to steady her breathing. The stopwatch in her hands was flashing wildly, ticking down faster than she could comprehend. 00:00:58, 00:00:57, 00:00:56. She realized that every second was magnified, every moment a test not just of courage, but of control. Margaret reached for her daughter again. "Tiana, listen to me." You can do this. You've been brave before. Remember how strong you are. Tiana nodded weakly, still gripping Nicholas's arm for balance. She felt herself shaking uncontrollably, but a strange resolve began to form inside her. She couldn't let fear rule her. She wouldn't. Not tonight. The corridor stretched ahead, dark and treacherous. Chunks of plaster and shards of glass littered the floor. Dust swirled in the air, stinging their eyes. The ceiling above groaned, threatening to collapse further. Every step Tiana took was calculated. She followed the faint glimmer of the stopwatch's red light, as if it was guiding her across the broken corridor. Nicholas spoke again, his voice calm but intense. Remember, Tiana, courage is not the absence of fear. It's acting even when fear is all you feel. Empathy is not weakness. It is your shield. Tiana felt a strange warmth at his words, despite the terror surrounding her. She recalled every act of kindness she had done, every time she had stood up for someone smaller or weaker. Each memory lent her strength. She held the stopwatch tightly, pressing the button to slow its furious ticking. It worked, if only slightly. The red glow steadied. As she inched forward, she glanced at her mother, who was bent on one knee, supporting herself with the cane. Margaret's face was pale, but her eyes were sharp and determined. Tiana, she whispered, you are stronger than any fear. Keep moving, one step at a time. Tiana nodded. She took a deep breath and placed her foot carefully on a section of the marble that still seemed stable. The floor groaned beneath her weight, but it held. She inched forward again, carefully avoiding the larger cracks and debris. The mansion seemed to watch her, the walls trembling, as if aware of her every move. Then, from somewhere above, a faint metallic creak echoed. Tiana froze. She looked up and saw that another part of the ceiling had begun to shift. Shadows danced across the broken chandelier, flickering in a menacing rhythm. Nicholas moved slightly, positioning himself between Tiana and the shifting ceiling. Do not panic, he said softly. Focus on the path. Trust yourself. Tiana swallowed, her throat dry. She felt her courage faltering for a moment, but then she remembered her mother's words. She remembered the kindness she had shown others, the courage she had summoned when standing up for herself and friends. She gripped the stopwatch tighter. Slowly, carefully, she moved forward again. Step by step, inch by inch, she navigated the treacherous corridor. Her legs burned, her hands trembled, but she refused to stop. The stopwatch ticked down relentlessly. 00:00:39, 00:00:38, 00:00:37. The red glow pulsed against the walls, illuminating shards of glass like tiny flames. Suddenly, a loud snap echoed above them. Dust and plaster rained down once more. Nicholas grabbed Tiana and pulled her back just in time. Another chain from the ceiling had broken, swinging dangerously close. Margaret's voice trembled. Tiana, be careful. I'm trying, Mom. Tiana yelled, fear and determination mixing in her voice. Nicholas stepped closer to her, guiding her. You're doing well, but the test isn't over. It's only beginning. Tiana glanced at the stopwatch. The numbers were flashing faster now. 00:00:28, 00:00:27, 00:00:26. It was almost impossible to think clearly. Every instinct screamed to run, to hide, to give up, but she refused. She focused on one step at a time, listening to the rhythm of her heart, the faint ticking of the stopwatch, and the whispered encouragements of her mother. As she moved forward, she noticed something strange. The shadows on the walls seemed to form shapes. Faces, hands, figures. They were fleeting, barely visible, but enough to make her heart race. She realized that the mansion itself was reacting to her emotions. Every step she took with courage seemed to stabilize the floor slightly. Every hesitation made the ceiling tremble more violently. Nicholas observed her closely. Yes, Tiana, that's it. Keep going. Your heart will guide you. Finally, she reached the edge of the damaged corridor. Before her stretched a narrow passage, lit faintly by emergency lights from the far end. She glanced at her mother, who nodded encouragingly. Tiana took a deep breath and stepped forward. The floor creaked under her weight, but it held. Relief washed over her briefly. She had made it across the worst section. But then, without warning, the stopwatch began to flash wildly again. 00:00:15. 00:00:14. 00:00:13. A shadow moved across the passage ahead. A dark, fast-moving blur that seemed to materialize from the floor itself. Tiana's stomach twisted. She froze, unsure what it was or how to react. Nicholas stepped closer, his hand on her shoulder. Do not run from it, Tiana. Face it. That is part of the test. Margaret's hands were trembling as she supported her daughter. Whatever it is, baby, you are ready. You are brave. You are kind. Tiana swallowed hard. She gripped the stopwatch and pressed the button again, trying to slow its frantic ticking. The red glow steadied briefly. Then the shadow lunged forward. Tiana screamed as she instinctively ducked, feeling the air rush past her head. Dust and debris flew as something heavy crashed into the wall beside her, leaving a long gouge in the marble. Margaret gasped, holding onto her daughter. Nicholas lunged, steadying Tiana and guiding her away from the danger. The stopwatch ticked down faster. 00:00:08. 00:00:07. 00:00:06. Tiana's heart raced. She realized this was not just a physical test. It was a mental one. A challenge to keep her focus, courage, and empathy intact under extreme pressure. She forced herself to breathe slowly, to calm the fear raging inside her. And then, as she straightened, she saw it. A large panel of the ceiling above them had cracked completely. Dust and plaster hung precariously. Chains swayed dangerously. Nicholas's eyes narrowed. This is the final stage. Tiana's stomach twisted. She had no idea what was coming next. The stopwatch's red glow reflected in her wide eyes. 00:00:05. 00:00:04. 00:00:03. Before she could react further, the ceiling above them gave way with a deafening crash. A massive chandelier, long dormant and heavy, fell straight toward them. Tiana screamed. Margaret cried out. Nicholas lunged forward with impossible speed, grabbing Tiana and pulling her to safety. The chandelier hit the marble floor, shattering into countless pieces. Dust and shards flew everywhere, the sound echoing like thunder. Tiana's heart pounded in her chest. She looked up at the ceiling, trembling. She had survived, but for how long? The stopwatch flashed once more, brighter than ever, ticking down. 00:00:01. 00:00:00. And then, silence. The silence that followed the chandelier's crash was deafening. Dust hung thick in the air, and shards of crystal and marble littered the floor like deadly confetti. Tiana's chest heaved as she struggled to catch her breath. Her hands shook, still gripping the stopwatch tightly. Every muscle in her body screamed with exhaustion, fear, and adrenaline all at once. Margaret clutched her daughter, her voice trembling. Tiana, are you okay? Baby, look at me. Tiana nodded shakily, though she was far from composed. I think so, Mom, she whispered, voice cracking. Her eyes flicked to Nicholas Harrington, who stood a few feet away, surveying the destruction with cold precision. His expression was unreadable calm, yet strangely approving. Nicholas stepped forward, the red glow of the stopwatch reflecting off his glasses. Well done, Tiana. You made it through the first stage. Tiana's heart skipped a beat. Stage? She looked at him incredulously. Stage? What do you mean? He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he gestured toward the corridor ahead, now partially blocked by debris. This mansion, my life, they are tests just like this corridor. And tonight, You are being tested not just for courage, but for your heart, your character, your choices. Tiana felt a shiver run down her spine. She didn't fully understand, but a strange determination began to settle inside her. If this was a test of heart, she knew she couldn't let fear control her. Margaret nodded, gripping Tiana's hands tightly. Listen to me, baby. You have survived this far because you stayed brave. You stayed calm. You helped yourself and kept your mind clear. That is what courage looks like. Tiana took a deep breath, trying to steady her trembling limbs. She glanced at the stopwatch. It was still glowing red, ticking slowly now. 00:01:30. 00:01:29. She swallowed hard. Somehow the timer had reset. Nicholas's test was relentless, never giving her a true moment of rest. But she felt stronger than before. She could do this. She had to. The corridor ahead, though damaged, seemed navigable. The larger chunks of debris had settled, leaving small gaps she could carefully step across. Margaret moved beside her, still leaning on her cane, encouraging her daughter with quiet murmurs of support. Step by careful step, Tiana moved forward. Each footfall made the marble groan under her weight, but the floor held. Dust settled lightly over the broken shards, sparkling like stars in the dim red glow. The tension in the air was suffocating, yet she refused to let it overwhelm her. Nicholas walked beside her now, slightly behind, allowing her to take the lead. Remember, Tiana, he said softly, the world will test you in ways you cannot predict, but your response, that defines you. Fear is easy. Courage, empathy, kindness, they require effort. And you've shown all three. Tiana's heart beat faster, but his words gave her a strange sense of calm. She glanced back at Margaret, who gave her a reassuring nod. You've got this, baby. I know you do. Tiana's mind worked frantically. If this was a test of character, she had to make sure she wasn't just surviving. She had to act. She looked around the corridor, noticing the broken shards and debris. She realized that if she carefully gathered the larger shards of crystal from the chandelier, she could block the path to the more dangerous sections, making it safer for both herself and her mother. Taking a deep breath, she carefully picked up one of the larger shards. It was sharp, but she held it firmly, feeling a sense of purpose. Slowly, she placed it against the edge of a cracked floor panel, testing its stability. It didn't move. She smiled faintly. Step by step, she continued this process, using shards to stabilize the path and prevent further accidents. It was painstaking work, but with each shard placed, her confidence grew. She felt as if she were proving something, not just to Nicholas, but to herself. Margaret watched in awe. Tiana, you're incredible, she whispered. You're thinking, planning, helping. That's real courage. Nicholas observed silently, the faintest trace of a smile appearing at the corner of his mouth. He didn't interfere, didn't give instructions. He simply watched, letting her take control. For a moment, it seemed as if the tension eased slightly. The stopwatch glowed steadily, the corridor settled, and the dust began to drift gently toward the edges of the hallway. Tiana felt a strange sense of accomplishment. She had survived the chaos, and she had acted with courage and empathy. But then, without warning, a sudden, sharp metallic sound echoed from the ceiling. Tiana froze. Her heart leaped into her throat. The ceiling above them shuddered violently. Dust and small fragments of plaster began to fall again. Margaret gasped, clutching her daughter tightly. Nicholas's eyes narrowed. Tiana, stay focused. This is not a threat. It is part of the test. Before she could react further, the sound grew louder, a deep, grinding noise as if the entire structure of the mansion was shifting. A section of the floor ahead cracked open, wider than anything before, revealing a gaping void beneath. Tiana stumbled back, her stomach twisting in fear. Margaret held her firmly. Baby, steady. Remember your courage. Tiana glanced at the stopwatch. The red glow pulsed rapidly. 00:00:20. 00:00:19. 00:00:18. The timer seemed to mock her, a constant reminder that the test was far from over. Then, a shadow moved across the broken floor. It was larger than anything she had seen before, darker and moving with purpose. Tiana froze, unsure whether to run or stand her ground. Nicholas stepped closer, his hand resting lightly on her shoulder. Do not let fear control you. You have proven you can think, act, and survive. Now, face the next challenge with the same heart and mind. Tiana's gaze hardened. She realized that no matter what happened, she had to trust herself. Fear would not guide her, her courage and empathy would. She took a deep breath and stepped forward carefully, using the shards of crystal she had placed earlier as a guide. The shadow moved again, closer this time, revealing itself to be a section of the ceiling support that had broken loose, swinging ominously like a pendulum. Tiana's heart raced, but she focused. Step by careful step, she moved forward, avoiding the swinging debris. Her hands trembled, her legs shook, but she didn't give in to panic. Margaret whispered encouragement from behind, her voice steady despite the chaos. That's it, baby. You're doing it. Keep moving. Finally, Tiana reached the edge of the broken corridor. Relief washed over her briefly. She had survived the immediate danger, her courage and quick thinking guiding her through the treacherous path. But the mansion was far from done. A loud, grinding crash echoed from the ceiling above. A large, ornate wooden beam dislodged, swinging dangerously toward them. Tiana screamed as the beam hurtled down. Nicholas reacted instantly, pushing her out of the way, shielding her with his own body. The beam crashed into the floor with a deafening sound, splintering into massive shards that sent dust and debris flying. Tiana fell to her knees, coughing, heart pounding. Margaret wrapped her arms around her, holding her tightly. Baby, it's okay, you're safe for now. Nicholas stood nearby, surveying the damage. His eyes were sharp, calculating. The next stage begins, he said calmly, almost to himself. Tiana's stomach twisted. She knew this was far from over. The test was relentless, the mansion unpredictable, and the shadows still moved around them. The stopwatch ticked once more, glowing red and pulsing violently. 00:00:10, 00:00:09, 00:00:08. Tiana's hands shook as she held it tightly. She realized that no matter what came next, she had to trust herself. She had survived so far with courage, empathy, and quick thinking, and she would need all three to face what was coming. And then, without warning, a loud, deafening crash erupted from the far end of the corridor. The walls shook violently, dust and debris flying everywhere. Tiana screamed. Margaret clutched her tightly. Nicholas's eyes narrowed, a flash of intensity crossing his face. Something huge was moving toward them, something they couldn't yet see. And at that exact moment, the floor beneath Tiana's feet began to give way. Tiana's scream echoed through the corridor as the floor beneath her gave way. Dust and debris rained down like a storm, and the marble tiles split under the pressure. She felt herself tilting, the stopwatch slipping from her trembling hands. Her heart pounded in her chest so violently she feared it would burst. "Hold on, Tiana," Margaret cried, reaching desperately for her daughter. Her cane clattered to the floor as she stretched every inch of her arms. Nicholas reacted instantly. In a single, fluid motion, he lunged forward, catching Tiana around the waist and pulling her back just as the marble edge crumbled beneath her. She stumbled against him, breathless and trembling. "Are you okay?" he asked, his voice calm, controlled, but with an intensity that made Tiana flinch. Tiana nodded weakly, still gripping the stopwatch tightly. I think so," she whispered, tears running down her cheeks. The floor beneath them groaned, cracks spider-webbing outward as if daring them to move further. Margaret knelt beside her daughter, hugging her tightly. "Baby, you're okay. You're safe. We'll get through this." Tiana took a deep, shuddering breath. Somehow, she had survived yet another extreme test. But the mansion was far from done. Every wall, ceiling, and floor seemed to pulse with anticipation, alive and waiting. She looked up at Nicholas, who stood silently, surveying the damage with a piercing gaze. "This is the real test," he said softly. "It's not just courage. It's not just quick thinking. It's everything about you. The way you handle fear, the way you care for others, the choices you make under pressure." Tiana's chest heaved. She glanced at the stopwatch. The red glow pulsed urgently. 00:01:20. 00:01:19. 00:01:18. It seemed almost alive, warning her that time was slipping, and that every second mattered. Margaret gently helped Tiana to her feet. "Listen, baby," she said softly. "You've made it this far because you've stayed brave. But remember, kindness is part of that strength. Help me and anyone else if you can, even when it's hard." Tiana nodded. She realized her mother was right. Surviving wasn't enough. She had to act, not just react. She had to keep her mind clear, her heart steady, and her decisions thoughtful. Step by careful step, they moved forward, navigating the cracked marble and scattered debris. Tiana kept her eyes on the glowing red stopwatch, letting it guide her through the maze-like corridor. Every movement required precision and focus. Every breath had to be measured. The corridor seemed endless, twisting and turning in ways that made her dizzy. Shadows shifted along the walls, fleeting and strange, making her stomach twist with unease. Something about the mansion felt alive, almost sentient, reacting to their fear and determination. Nicholas followed silently, letting Tiana lead. "Focus on what you can control," he said. "Do not waste energy on fear. Fear weakens you. Strength comes from presence, awareness, and heart." Tiana took another deep breath, steadying herself. She realized the shadows weren't just frightening. They were teaching her to observe, to predict, to act carefully. Her mother's words echoed in her mind. "Kindness and courage are your shield." As they moved, Tiana noticed a small crack along the wall where the dust was thicker. She paused, kneeling to examine it. A loose beam had shifted, threatening to collapse at any moment. Carefully, she placed a shard of broken chandelier beneath it, stabilizing the beam. Margaret gasped softly. "You're thinking, Tiana," Margaret said, her voice trembling with pride. "That's real courage. Not just running from danger, but acting to make it safer for everyone." Nicholas observed quietly, a faint trace of approval in his eyes. He didn't interfere, didn't speak, letting Tiana take control of the situation. The stopwatch ticked down relentlessly. 00:01:05. 00:01:04. 00:01:03. Each second a heartbeat in the corridor. Each pulse a reminder that time was fleeting and every choice mattered. Suddenly, a loud metallic groan echoed from above. Dust fell from the ceiling, and Tiana looked up in alarm. One of the larger beams above had begun to shift dangerously, threatening to crash down. "Step back," Margaret cried, but it was too late. The beam fell, splintering into massive fragments. Tiana instinctively dove forward, narrowly avoiding a direct hit. Nicholas grabbed her, holding her close as the shards scattered around them. The red glow of the stopwatch pulsed violently. 00:00:50. 00:00:49. 00:00:48. Tiana's heart raced. The mansion seemed to mock her, daring her to move forward, daring her to fail. But she refused to give in. She steadied her breathing, focusing on the fragments ahead, calculating her steps carefully. Nicholas helped her to her feet. "This isn't just about survival anymore," he said quietly. "It's about the choices you make while you survive." Tiana nodded. She understood now that every small action, every thoughtful decision, every act of courage, every moment of empathy was part of the test. She couldn't just run. She had to act with intention. Carefully, they moved forward. Tiana used shards of broken glass and pieces of marble to stabilize weak sections of the floor. Each step required focus, each movement precision. Her muscles burned, her hands trembled, but she refused to stop. Margaret watched, awestruck. "Baby, you're amazing. So strong, so smart." Tiana felt a surge of pride and determination. She wasn't just surviving. She was actively shaping her path, making the corridor safer, proving to herself and Nicholas that she could handle whatever came next. But just as they neared a slightly more stable section, a loud snap echoed from the far end of the corridor. A massive ceiling tile broke free, swinging dangerously like a pendulum. Tiana froze. The floor trembled beneath her feet. Margaret's voice shook. "Tiana, watch out!" Nicholas acted immediately, pulling Tiana and Margaret to the side. The tile crashed onto the floor, shattering into countless shards. The sound was deafening, the vibrations running through the marble beneath their feet. Tiana's heart pounded. She glanced at the stopwatch. Its red glow pulsed faster than ever. 00:00:30, 00:00:29, 00:00:28. The mansion seemed alive, almost sentient, reacting to every movement, every heartbeat, every choice. And then, without warning, the floor beneath a large section of the corridor gave way. Dust and marble fragments tumbled into the darkness below. Tiana screamed as she felt herself slipping again. Margaret reached desperately, clutching her daughter's arm. Nicholas reacted instantly, anchoring both of them with his strong grip. The stopwatch flashed violently. 00:00:10, 00:00:09, 00:00:08. Tiana's heart raced faster than the ticking timer. She realized that the mansion's tests were escalating, pushing her to the limits of her courage, her focus, and her empathy. Then, from the shadows above, a massive chandelier, long dormant, began to swing, threatening to crash down on them. Tiana's stomach twisted. She could barely breathe, her hands shaking uncontrollably. Margaret whispered, "Baby, stay calm. Trust yourself." Nicholas's voice cut through the chaos. "This is it, Tiana. The moment that defines you." If you're enjoying this story, please subscribe to the channel. Your support keeps us motivated and reminds us that our stories are making a difference in people's lives. The chandelier swung lower, faster, crashing toward them with deafening force. Tiana's scream tore through the hallway as the massive chandelier swung down toward them. The red glow of the stopwatch reflected off its crystal shards, casting jagged, flickering shadows across the marble floor. Dust filled the air, stinging her eyes and making it hard to breathe. Every muscle in her body screamed for her to run, but there was nowhere safe to go. "Move, Tiana!" Margaret shouted, clutching her daughter tightly. Her cane had fallen long ago, and her hands shook as she tried to steady herself. Nicholas Harrington reacted instantly. In a single, precise motion, he grabbed Tiana around the waist and pulled her backward just as the chandelier crashed to the floor. Crystal shards shattered like bullets, scattering in every direction. The impact sent a tremor through the marble tiles beneath their feet. Tiana's heart pounded in her chest. Her knees buckled, and she sank to the floor, trembling. Dust coated her hair and clothes. I can't," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "You can, Tiana," Nicholas said calmly, his hand firm on her shoulder. "You've survived everything so far. You know how to handle fear. Now focus. Control your heart, your mind, your actions." Tiana took a deep, shuddering breath. She glanced at the stopwatch. It was glowing brighter than ever, ticking down. 00:01:15, 00:01:14, 00:01:13. Every pulse seemed to echo through the mansion, as if the building itself was alive, aware of her fear and determination. Margaret knelt beside her daughter. "Baby, remember your courage. Remember all the times you've faced hard things before. You've got this. I know you do." Tiana nodded weakly. She realized that survival wasn't enough. This test required more. It demanded action, focus, and empathy even under extreme pressure. She rose to her feet slowly, steadying herself. Her hands were sticky with dust and sweat, but she gripped the stopwatch tightly. Step by careful step, she navigated the debris-strewn corridor. Every shard of crystal, every fragment of marble, every loose beam became a threat, but also a tool. She began using them strategically, shifting pieces of debris to block the more unstable areas and create safer pathways. Nicholas followed silently, observing her every move. Good, Tiana. That's it. You're thinking, planning. That's real courage, more than running or hiding. It's about action under pressure. Tiana's chest heaved. For the first time that night, she felt a flicker of control. The mansion was dangerous, chaotic, unpredictable, but she had a plan. Her mind was clear, her heart steady. She wasn't just surviving. She was leading. Margaret watched in awe. Baby, you're amazing. So brave, so strong. Step by careful step, they moved forward. The floor groaned beneath them, but held. The red glow of the stopwatch illuminated the broken corridor, revealing shadows that flickered across the walls like fleeting phantoms. Each step required careful calculation. One wrong move could send them tumbling into the darkness below. Then, a sudden metallic screech echoed from above. Tiana froze. She looked up to see a large section of the ceiling beginning to shift dangerously, cracks spiderwebbing across the marble surface. Move! Margaret cried, her voice shaking. Tiana's hands trembled, but she forced herself to act. She ducked beneath a hanging beam and shifted a shard of fallen crystal to stabilize a loose tile above. It wobbled precariously but didn't fall. Relief washed over her for a brief moment. Nicholas's eyes narrowed, a faint trace of approval in his gaze. Good. That's the kind of thinking I expect from someone who can survive and protect others. The stopwatch ticked down relentlessly. 00:00:48. 00:00:47. 00:00:46. Each second a heartbeat of the mansion. Each pulse a reminder that time was against them. Tiana moved carefully, each step measured and deliberate. She glanced at Margaret, who gave her a small nod of encouragement. Keep going, baby. You're doing it. Suddenly, a loud snap echoed from the far end of the corridor. Dust and plaster rained down from the ceiling. Tiana instinctively ducked, pressing herself against Nicholas. The walls seemed to shake violently. The floor! Nicholas shouted. Watch your step! Tiana's stomach twisted. The marble beneath her feet had cracked wide, revealing a deep chasm. She froze, panic threatening to overwhelm her. Step back, Tiana! Margaret cried. Tiana clenched the stopwatch tightly. Her mind raced. There was no going back. The corridor behind them was unstable, and the floor ahead was a deadly drop. She realized that this test required her to act decisively. Carefully, she inched forward, placing her feet on the smallest stable sections of marble. The cracks widened slightly beneath her weight, but she didn't panic. She focused on each step, on the rhythm of her breathing, on her heartbeat. Every second mattered. Then, from the shadows above, a large beam broke free, swinging toward them like a pendulum. Tiana froze in terror. Nicholas reacted instantly, grabbing her and pulling her aside. The beam crashed into the floor, splintering into massive shards that scattered everywhere. Dust filled the air, and Tiana coughed violently. The red glow of the stopwatch pulsed faster. 00:00:20. 00:00:19. 00:00:18. Tiana's heart raced. The mansion was relentless, each event more dangerous than the last. But she refused to give in to fear. She had survived too much to fail now. She steadied herself, gripped the stopwatch, and focused on the next steps. As she moved forward, she noticed a shadow shifting along the far wall. It was dark, fast-moving, and seemed almost alive. Her stomach twisted in fear, but she pressed onward. Nicholas's hand rested lightly on her shoulder. Do not fear what you cannot see clearly, Tiana. Focus on your heart, your mind, your actions. Tiana took a deep breath. She realized that she couldn't just react. She had to anticipate, plan, and act with purpose. Carefully, she used shards of crystal to stabilize the loose sections of the floor ahead. Step by step, she navigated the dangerous corridor. Margaret's voice whispered encouragement from behind. "Baby, you're so strong. Keep going. You can do this." Finally, they reached a section that seemed more stable. Tiana exhaled, feeling a brief surge of relief. She had survived yet another extreme test. Her courage, empathy, and intelligence had guided her through the chaos. But just as she allowed herself a moment of hope, a loud, deafening crash erupted from above. A massive section of the ceiling broke free, swinging downward with terrifying force. Dust and debris filled the air, and the floor trembled violently. Tiana screamed. Margaret clutched her tightly. Nicholas reacted instantly, pulling both of them to safety. The debris hit the floor with a deafening sound, splintering into countless shards. Tiana's heart pounded uncontrollably. She looked at the stopwatch. Its red glow pulsed violently. 00:00:10, 00:00:09, 00:00:08. The mansion seemed alive, almost sentient, testing her to the limits of fear, courage, and empathy. And then, just as Tiana steadied herself, the floor beneath her feet began to shift violently. Cracks spider-webbed outward, and a massive section tilted dangerously toward the dark void below. Tiana's scream echoed through the corridor. Margaret's voice trembled. Nicholas's eyes narrowed, a sharp flash of intensity crossing his face. The mansion's tests were far from over, and at that exact moment, Tiana realized she might not survive the next second. The floor beneath Tiana groaned and shifted violently, cracks spreading like spiderwebs across the marble. Her knees buckled, and she stumbled, nearly falling into the dark void below. Margaret screamed, reaching desperately for her daughter's hand. Dust and debris filled the air, stinging Tiana's eyes and throat. The red glow of the stopwatch pulsed violently, casting chaotic shadows along the walls. Nicholas reacted instantly. He lunged forward, grabbing Tiana around the waist and pulling her back with all his strength. The floor beneath them continued to tremble, as if the mansion itself were testing their every move. Tiana's heart raced, her breath coming in short, panicked gasps. "Stay calm, Tiana," Nicholas commanded. His voice was firm, commanding, yet there was a strange warmth underneath, a subtle encouragement that steadied her trembling body. "Focus on what you can control." Tiana swallowed hard, trying to steady her shaking hands. Her eyes flicked to the stopwatch, now ticking down. 00:01:10, 00:01:09, 00:01:08. Each pulse of red light seemed to echo like a heartbeat, reminding her that every second counted. Margaret's hands trembled as she supported her daughter. "Baby, you've made it this far. Keep going. I know you can do it." Tiana took a deep, shuddering breath. Somehow, amidst the chaos and fear, she found a sense of focus. She had survived every extreme test so far, not just with courage, but by thinking ahead, planning her movements, and protecting her mother. She realized now that the mansion's tests weren't just about survival. They were about character, about her heart, and how she responded under pressure. Carefully, she looked at the jagged cracks in the marble floor and noticed a pattern. Certain sections were more stable than others. She began to place shards of crystal and broken debris strategically, stabilizing the fragile marble panels and creating a narrow path across the dangerous corridor. Nicholas stepped back slightly, letting her take the lead. "Good, Tiana," he said softly. "That's it. Think, plan, protect. That's what this is about. Not just surviving, but leading." Tiana's chest heaved, but determination surged through her. She carefully navigated the treacherous path, inching forward step by step. Each footfall made the marble groan beneath her, but the shards she placed helped keep it from collapsing further. She glanced at her mother, who nodded with pride, even as her hands shook. "Baby, you're incredible," Margaret whispered. "So smart, so brave." For a brief moment, Tiana felt a flicker of hope. Perhaps they could make it through this stage. Perhaps they could survive the night. But then, without warning, a deep metallic screech echoed from above. A massive section of the ceiling shifted violently. Dust and small fragments of plaster rained down like a storm. Tiana froze in terror as she saw a large, splintering beam begin to fall, swinging like a pendulum directly toward them. "Move! Move!" Margaret shouted, panic in her voice. Tiana's legs shook, but she forced herself to act. She ducked beneath the swinging beam, narrowly avoiding a direct hit. Nicholas grabbed her, pulling her even closer as the beam crashed into the floor with a deafening crash, splintering into massive shards that flew in all directions. The red glow of the stopwatch pulsed faster. 00:00:55, 00:00:54, 00:00:53. The mansion seemed alive, almost sentient, as if aware of every step she took, every heartbeat, every choice. Tiana's stomach twisted. This was more than just a test of courage. It was a test of her intelligence, her empathy, her ability to act under pressure. She realized that surviving wasn't enough. She had to anticipate danger, think ahead, and protect herself and her mother. Carefully, she stepped forward again, using the shards and debris she had placed earlier to stabilize weak sections of the floor. Each movement required careful calculation, every step a test of precision. Her muscles ached, her hands trembled, but she refused to give in to fear. Margaret whispered encouragement from behind. "You've got this, baby. Just a little further. Keep going." Tiana nodded, forcing herself to focus. The shadows along the walls flickered in the red light, forming eerie shapes that made her heart race. But she kept moving forward, step by careful step, never letting fear control her. Then, a sudden, sharp crack echoed from the far end of the corridor. The floor beneath a large section gave way completely, revealing a yawning chasm. Tiana froze, her stomach dropping. "Step back," Margaret cried, reaching desperately for her daughter. Tiana gripped the stopwatch tightly, her mind racing. There was no turning back. The path forward was narrow and treacherous, but she had to act. She noticed a few small, stable panels on the edge of the broken floor. Carefully, she inched forward, using shards of crystal to anchor herself. Nicholas's voice was steady, guiding her. "You can do this, Tiana. Think. Move carefully. Trust yourself." Her heart pounded violently. Each step felt like walking on the edge of a cliff, the chasm below threatening to swallow her. Dust and debris fell continuously, making it hard to see. Yet she pressed on, focused entirely on her path and the safety of her mother. Finally, she reached a slightly more stable section. Relief washed over her briefly. She had survived yet another extreme test. But the mansion was far from done. From somewhere above, a loud, grinding crash echoed. A massive section of the ceiling, previously hidden in shadow, shifted violently. Dust and debris rained down, and the red glow of the stopwatch reflected ominously in the chaos. Tiana's stomach twisted in fear. She saw it. A giant beam, splintered and swinging, coming directly toward them. Her mother gasped, clutching her tightly. Nicholas reacted instantly, grabbing both of them and pulling them to safety. The beam crashed into the floor with a deafening impact, splintering into countless shards. Dust filled the air, and Tiana coughed violently. The stopwatch pulsed faster than ever. 00:00:15, 00:00:14, 00:00:13. Tiana's heart raced uncontrollably. The mansion seemed to test her to the very limits of courage, focus, and empathy. And then, just as she steadied herself, the floor beneath a large section of the corridor tilted dangerously. The marble cracked wide, threatening to collapse into the darkness below. Tiana screamed, gripping the stopwatch. Margaret's voice trembled. Nicholas's eyes narrowed, a flash of intensity crossing his face. The mansion's test had reached a terrifying new extreme, and at that exact moment, Tiana realized she might not survive the next second. Tiana's scream echoed through the corridor as the floor beneath her tilted dangerously. Dust and debris fell from the ceiling, filling her lungs with grit and making it nearly impossible to see. The red glow of the stopwatch pulsed violently, reflecting off shards of marble and crystal like fiery sparks. Her heart raced so fast she thought it might burst. "Hold on, Tiana," Margaret shouted, clutching her daughter tightly. Her cane had long since been abandoned, and her hands shook as she tried to keep Tiana from sliding further toward the gaping chasm. Nicholas reacted instantly. He grabbed Tiana around the waist, anchoring her with all his strength. The floor groaned beneath their combined weight, but Nicholas held steady. "You can do this," he said firmly. "Focus. One step at a time. You are stronger than you think." Tiana swallowed hard, trying to steady her shaking hands. Her eyes flicked to the stopwatch, now ticking down. 00:01:05, 00:01:04, 00:01:03. The glowing red numbers seemed alive, pulsing with the mansion's own heartbeat. Every second reminded her that time was running out and that every movement had to be precise. Margaret's voice trembled as she held her daughter. "Baby, stay calm. Remember your courage. Remember who you are." Tiana took a deep, shuddering breath. Somehow, amidst the fear and chaos, she found a small spark of focus. She had survived every extreme test so far, not just by being brave, but by thinking ahead, planning her movements, and protecting her mother. Now she realized that the mansion's challenges were not just physical. They were a test of her heart, her empathy, and her intelligence. Step by careful step, she began to inch forward across the unstable floor. Every footfall made the marble groan beneath her weight. Dust swirled in the air, stinging her eyes, and loose debris threatened to send her tumbling into the abyss. But she held the stopwatch tightly and kept moving, stabilizing her path with shards of broken crystal wherever possible. Nicholas stayed close, his eyes sharp and calculating. "Good, Tiana. That's exactly how you should proceed. Think. Protect. This is not just survival, it's about showing strength and empathy under pressure." Tiana's chest heaved, but determination surged within her. She realized she wasn't just surviving anymore. She was actively shaping her own safety and the safety of those around her. Each careful step, each shard placed to stabilize the floor, made her feel more in control, more capable. Margaret watched in awe. "Baby, you're incredible. So brave, so smart." The red glow of the stopwatch continued to pulse. 00:00:50, 00:00:49, 00:00:48. Each tick was a reminder that time was fleeting, that the mansion's tests would only grow more dangerous. Then, a deep metallic groan echoed from above. Tiana froze. She looked up to see a massive section of the ceiling shifting violently. Cracks spiderwebbed across the marble tiles, threatening to collapse at any moment. "Move!" Margaret cried, panic in her voice. Tiana's legs shook, but she forced herself to act. Ducking beneath a swinging beam, she pressed a shard of crystal against a loose tile above, hoping to prevent it from falling. The tile wobbled but held. Relief washed over her briefly. Nicholas's eyes narrowed, a faint trace of approval in his gaze. "That's it. Think. Protect. That's courage in action, Tiana. Not just surviving, but helping others survive too." Step by careful step, Tiana continued across the unstable floor. Her hands were coated with dust and small cuts from the crystal shards, but she ignored the pain. Each movement had to be precise, every step deliberate. She glanced at her mother, who gave a small nod of encouragement despite her fear. "Keep going, baby. You're almost there," Margaret whispered. Suddenly, a loud snap echoed from the far end of the corridor. Dust and plaster rained down from the ceiling. The floor beneath a large section gave way completely, revealing a yawning chasm. Tiana froze, her stomach twisting in terror. "Step back, Tiana," Margaret cried. Tiana gripped the stopwatch tightly. There was no turning back. The corridor behind them was unstable, and the floor ahead was a deadly drop. She noticed a few small, stable panels on the edge of the broken floor. Carefully, she inched forward, using shards of crystal to anchor herself. Nicholas's voice was steady, guiding her. "You can do this, Tiana. Think. Move carefully. Trust yourself." Her heart raced violently. Each step felt like walking on a knife's edge. Dust and debris fell continuously, making it hard to see, but she pressed onward, fully focused on her path. Finally, she reached a slightly more stable section. Relief washed over her briefly. She had survived yet another extreme test. Her courage, empathy, and intelligence had guided her through the chaos. But the mansion was far from finished. A loud, grinding crash erupted from above. A massive section of the ceiling, previously hidden in shadow, shifted violently. Dust and debris rained down, and the red glow of the stopwatch reflected ominously in the chaos. Tiana's stomach twisted in fear. She saw it. A giant beam, splintered and swinging, coming directly toward them. Margaret gasped, clutching her tightly. Nicholas reacted instantly, pulling both of them to safety. The beam crashed into the floor with a deafening impact, splintering into countless shards. Dust filled the air, and Tiana coughed violently. The stopwatch pulsed faster than ever. 00:00:15. 00:00:14. 00:00:13. Tiana's heart raced uncontrollably. The mansion seemed alive, testing her to the very limits of courage, focus, and empathy. And then, just as she steadied herself, the floor beneath a large section of the corridor tilted dangerously. Cracks spiderwebbed outward, threatening to collapse entirely into the darkness below. Tiana screamed, gripping the stopwatch. Margaret's voice trembled. Nicholas's eyes narrowed, a flash of intensity crossing his face. The mansion's test had reached a terrifying new extreme, and at that exact moment, Tiana realized she might not survive the next second. The floor beneath Tiana trembled violently, the cracks spiderwebbing wider with every heartbeat. Dust and debris fell from the ceiling in sheets, making it nearly impossible to see. The red glow of the stopwatch pulsed like a heartbeat, each flicker highlighting the shards of marble and crystal scattered across the corridor. Tiana's stomach lurched as she felt the tilting floor give way beneath her once again. "Hold on, Tiana," Margaret shouted, clutching her daughter tightly. Her hands shook, but she refused to let go. "You can do this, baby. Keep moving." Nicholas reacted instantly. With a swift, fluid motion, he grabbed Tiana and anchored her against his chest. The marble tiles groaned under their weight, but he held steady. "Focus, Tiana. One step at a time. You've survived everything so far." Tiana swallowed hard, forcing herself to breathe deeply. She glanced at the stopwatch, now ticking down. 00:01:12. 00:01:11. 00:01:10. Each pulse of red light felt alive, echoing like the mansion's own heartbeat. Every second was a reminder that she had no margin for error. Margaret's voice trembled as she held her daughter. "Remember your courage, baby. Remember who you are. You've faced so much already." Tiana nodded weakly. Somehow, she found a spark of focus. She had survived every test so far by thinking ahead, planning her moves, and protecting her mother. The mansion's trials weren't just physical. They were a test of her character, her empathy, and her intelligence. Carefully, she began to navigate the unstable floor. Every footfall made the marble groan and shift beneath her. Dust swirled around her, stinging her eyes. Loose debris threatened to send her tumbling into the dark void below, but she held the stopwatch tightly and pressed forward, using shards of crystal and marble to stabilize her path wherever possible. If you're enjoying this story, please subscribe to the channel. Your support keeps us motivated and reminds us that our stories are making a difference in people's lives. Nicholas stayed close, his eyes sharp and observant. That's it, Tiana. Think, plan, protect. This is what separates mere survival from true courage. Keep your mind and heart in control. Tiana's chest heaved, but determination surged within her. She realized she wasn't just surviving anymore. She was shaping the outcome. Each careful step and every shard she placed to stabilize the floor strengthened her confidence. She was leading now, not just following. Margaret watched, her eyes wide with pride. Baby, you're incredible. So brave, so smart. The red glow of the stopwatch continued to pulse. 00:00:55, 00:00:54, 00:00:53. Each tick a reminder that the mansion's tests would only escalate. Then, a deep metallic groan echoed from above. Tiana froze. A massive section of the ceiling began to shift violently. Cracks spiderwebbed across the tiles, threatening to collapse at any moment. Move! Margaret shouted, panic in her voice. Tiana's legs shook, but she forced herself to act. Ducking beneath a swinging beam, she pressed a shard of crystal against a loose tile above, preventing it from falling. The tile wobbled but held. Relief washed over her briefly. Nicholas's eyes narrowed, a faint trace of approval crossing his face. Exactly. Think. Protect. That's courage in action, Tiana. Not just surviving, but helping others survive too. Step by careful step, Tiana continued across the unstable floor. Her hands were scraped and covered in dust, but she ignored the pain. Each movement had to be precise. Each step had to be deliberate. She glanced at her mother, who gave her a small nod of encouragement despite the fear in her eyes. Keep going, baby. You're almost there, Margaret whispered. Suddenly, a loud snap echoed from the far end of the corridor. Dust and plaster rained down. The floor beneath a large section gave way completely, revealing a yawning chasm. Tiana froze, stomach twisting in terror. Step back, Tiana, Margaret cried. Tiana gripped the stopwatch tightly. There was no going back. The corridor behind them was unstable, and the floor ahead was a deadly drop. She noticed a few small, stable panels on the edge of the broken floor. Carefully, she inched forward, using shards of crystal to anchor herself. Nicholas's voice was steady. You can do this, Tiana. Think. Move carefully. Trust yourself. Her heart raced violently. Each step felt like walking on the edge of a cliff. Dust and debris fell continuously, making it hard to see, but she pressed onward, fully focused on her path. Finally, she reached a slightly more stable section. Relief washed over her briefly. She had survived yet another extreme test. Her courage, empathy, and intelligence had guided her through the chaos. But the mansion was far from finished. From above, a loud, grinding crash echoed. A massive section of the ceiling, hidden in shadow, shifted violently. Dust and debris rained down, and the red glow of the stopwatch reflected ominously in the chaos. Tiana's stomach twisted in fear. She saw it. A giant beam, splintered and swinging, coming directly toward them. Margaret gasped, clutching her tightly. Nicholas reacted instantly, pulling both of them to safety. The beam crashed into the floor with a deafening impact, splintering into countless shards. Dust filled the air, and Tiana coughed violently. The stopwatch pulsed faster than ever. 00:00:15, 00:00:14, 00:00:13. Tiana's heart raced uncontrollably. The mansion seemed alive, testing her to the limits of courage, focus, and empathy. Then, just as she steadied herself, the floor beneath a large section of the corridor tilted dangerously. Cracks spiderwebbed outward, threatening to collapse entirely into the darkness below. Tiana screamed, gripping the stopwatch. Margaret's voice trembled. Nicholas's eyes narrowed, a flash of intensity crossing his face. The mansion's test had reached a terrifying new extreme, and at that exact moment, Tiana realized she might not survive the next second. The corridor tilted sharply beneath Tiana's feet, and dust exploded into the air like smoke from a fire. Her knees buckled, and she stumbled, barely catching herself against Nicholas's strong grip. The red glow of the stopwatch reflected off the jagged shards of marble scattered across the floor, flashing like warning lights. Every heartbeat echoed in her ears, deafening in its intensity. "Hold on, Tiana," Margaret shouted, her voice trembling but determined. She reached desperately for her daughter's hand, keeping her from sliding further toward the gaping chasm. "You can make it. Keep moving." Nicholas's grip was firm around her waist. "Focus, Tiana. Step by step. You've survived everything so far. Now you must trust yourself." Tiana swallowed hard and took a deep breath. Her eyes flicked to the stopwatch, which was glowing brighter than ever. 00:01:08, 00:01:07, 00:01:06. The numbers pulsed like a heartbeat, echoing through the corridor and heightening the sense of urgency. Every second mattered. Every movement could determine survival or disaster. Margaret's hands shook as she held her daughter. "Baby, remember who you are. Your courage, your heart. You've come so far." Tiana nodded weakly. Somehow, amidst the chaos and fear, she found focus. She realized that surviving wasn't enough. The mansion's tests were a measure not only of courage but of intelligence, empathy, and the ability to act under pressure. Step by careful step, she began to navigate the unstable floor. Each footfall made the marble groan beneath her weight. Dust stung her eyes, and loose debris threatened to send her plunging into the darkness below. She gripped the stopwatch tightly and moved forward, using shards of crystal to stabilize the most treacherous sections of the floor. Nicholas stayed close, his eyes sharp and calculating. "That's it, Tiana. Think, plan, protect. True strength is not just surviving. It's guiding others to safety." Tiana's chest heaved. Determination surged through her. She wasn't just surviving. She was leading. Every step she carefully calculated, every shard placed to stabilize the floor, strengthened her confidence and her resolve. Margaret whispered encouragement from behind. "Baby, so smart, so brave. Keep going." The red glow of the stopwatch continued to pulse. 00:00:55, 00:00:54, 00:00:53. Each tick reminded Tiana that the mansion's challenges would only grow more dangerous. Then, a deep metallic groan echoed from above. Tiana froze. A massive section of the ceiling shifted violently, cracks spiderwebbing across the marble tiles. "Move!" Margaret shouted. Panic laced her voice. Tiana's legs shook, but she forced herself to act. She ducked beneath a swinging beam, pressing a shard of crystal against a loose tile above. The tile wobbled but held. A small sense of relief washed over her. Nicholas's eyes narrowed, a faint trace of approval in his gaze. "Exactly. Think. Protect. That's courage in action, Tiana. Not just surviving, but helping others survive too." Step by careful step, Tiana continued across the unstable floor. Her hands were scraped and coated in dust, but she ignored the pain. Each step required precision. Each movement had to be deliberate. She glanced at her mother, who gave a small nod of encouragement despite the fear in her eyes. "Keep going, baby. You're almost there," Margaret whispered. Suddenly, a loud snap echoed from the far end of the corridor. Dust and plaster rained down. The floor beneath a large section gave way completely, revealing a yawning chasm. Tiana froze, stomach twisting in terror. "Step back, Tiana," Margaret cried. Tiana gripped the stopwatch tightly. There was no turning back. The corridor behind them was unstable, and the floor ahead was a deadly drop. She noticed a few small, stable panels on the edge of the broken floor. Carefully, she inched forward, using shards of crystal to anchor herself. Nicholas's voice was calm but firm. "You can do this, Tiana. Move carefully. Trust yourself." Her heart pounded violently. Each step felt like walking on a razor's edge. Dust and debris fell continuously, making it hard to see, but she pressed onward, entirely focused on the path she had to take. Finally, she reached a slightly more stable section. Relief washed over her. She had survived yet another extreme test. Her courage, empathy, and intelligence had guided her through the chaos. But the mansion was far from finished. From above, a loud grinding crash echoed. A massive section of the ceiling, previously hidden in shadows, shifted violently. Dust and debris rained down, and the red glow of the stopwatch reflected ominously. Tiana's stomach twisted. She saw it. A giant beam, splintered and swinging, coming directly toward them. Margaret gasped, clutching her tightly. Nicholas reacted instantly, pulling both of them to safety. The beam crashed into the floor with a deafening impact, splintering into countless shards. Dust filled the air, and Tiana coughed violently. The stopwatch pulsed faster than ever. 00:00:15. 00:00:14. 00:00:13. Tiana's heart raced uncontrollably. The mansion seemed alive, testing her to the limits of courage, focus, and empathy. Then, just as she steadied herself, the floor beneath a large section tilted dangerously. Cracks spider-webbed outward, threatening to collapse entirely into the darkness below. Tiana screamed, gripping the stopwatch. Margaret's voice trembled. Nicholas's eyes narrowed, a flash of intensity crossing his face. The mansion's test had reached a terrifying new extreme, and at that exact moment, Tiana realized she might not survive the next second. The floor beneath Tiana trembled violently, cracks spreading wider with every heartbeat. Dust and shards of marble swirled around her, stinging her eyes and scraping her skin. The red glow of the stopwatch pulsed furiously, each flash like a warning, each tick like the mansion itself counting down her chances. "Hold on, Tiana," Margaret shouted, her voice trembling but fierce. She clutched her daughter tightly, refusing to let her slip toward the yawning chasm. "You've made it this far. Keep going." Nicholas's grip on Tiana was firm, almost unyielding. "Focus. Every step matters. You've survived everything so far, and you will survive this. Trust yourself." Tiana swallowed hard, forcing herself to breathe deeply. Her hands were coated in dust and small cuts from shards of marble, but she ignored the pain. The stopwatch ticked down. 00:01:10. 00:01:09. 00:01:08. Each pulse of red light seemed alive, echoing like the mansion's heartbeat. Every second mattered. Every choice could mean life or death. Margaret's voice, quivering but determined, reminded her of why she couldn't give up. "Baby, remember your courage, your heart, your strength. You've faced so much already. You can do this." Step by careful step, Tiana began moving forward. She kept her focus on the stable sections of marble, using shards of broken crystal to stabilize precarious panels. Her muscles ached, and fear gnawed at her, but she refused to let panic rule her actions. Nicholas stayed close, his gaze scanning the corridor for any hint of danger. "Good, Tiana. That's it. Think. Act. Protect. That is what real courage looks like." Tiana's chest heaved, determination surging within her. She realized that she wasn't just surviving. She was shaping her path, guiding herself and her mother safely through the chaos. Every step was calculated, every action deliberate. She felt a new sense of control amidst the danger, a quiet power in her ability to navigate the madness. Margaret whispered encouragement, pride and fear blending in her voice. "Baby, you're incredible. So brave. Keep going." The red glow of the stopwatch continued its furious pulse. 00:00:55. 00:00:54. 00:00:53. Each tick reminded Tiana that the mansion's trials were far from over, and that the most dangerous challenges were still ahead. Suddenly, a deep metallic groan echoed from above. Tiana froze. She looked up to see a massive section of the ceiling shifting violently. Cracks spider-webbed across the tiles, threatening to collapse. "Move!" Margaret shouted, panic evident in her voice. Tiana's legs shook, but she forced herself to act. Ducking beneath a swinging beam, she pressed a shard of crystal against a loose tile above. The tile wobbled but did not fall. Relief washed over her briefly, but she knew better than to relax. Nicholas's eyes narrowed, approval flickering in his gaze. Exactly. Think. Protect. That's courage in action. Not just surviving, but ensuring others survive with you. Step by careful step, Tiana continued across the unstable floor. Her hands scraped and raw, her lungs burning from dust. She pressed on. Each movement required precision. Each choice could determine life or death. She glanced at her mother, who gave her a small nod of encouragement despite her fear. "Keep going, baby." "Almost there," Margaret whispered. Then, a sudden, sharp snap echoed from the far end of the corridor. Dust and plaster fell in a cascading cloud. The floor beneath a wide section gave way, revealing the dark, gaping chasm. Tiana froze, stomach twisting in terror. "Step back, Tiana," Margaret cried. Tiana gripped the stopwatch tightly. There was no going back. The corridor behind them was unstable. The floor ahead was treacherous, deadly. But she noticed a few small, stable panels along the edge. Carefully, she inched forward, using shards of crystal to anchor herself. Nicholas's voice was calm but firm. "You can do this, Tiana. Step carefully. Trust yourself." Her heart raced. Each step felt like walking on a knife's edge. Dust and debris fell continuously, but she pressed onward, entirely focused on the path she had to take. Finally, she reached a slightly more stable section. Relief washed over her, brief but powerful. She had survived yet another extreme test. Her courage, intelligence, and empathy had guided her through the chaos. But the mansion was far from done. From above, a loud grinding crash erupted. A massive section of ceiling, previously hidden in shadows, shifted violently. Dust and debris rained down, and the red glow of the stopwatch reflected ominously, casting eerie patterns across the walls. Tiana's stomach twisted. She saw it. A giant beam, splintered and swinging toward them. Margaret gasped, clutching her tightly. Nicholas reacted immediately, pulling both of them to safety. The beam crashed into the floor with a deafening impact, splintering into countless shards. Dust filled the air, and Tiana coughed violently. The stopwatch pulsed faster than ever. 00:00:15. 00:00:14. 00:00:13. Tiana's heart raced uncontrollably. The mansion seemed alive, testing her to the limits of courage, focus, and empathy. Then, the floor beneath a large section of the corridor tilted violently. Cracks spider-webbed outward, threatening to collapse entirely into the darkness below. Tiana screamed, gripping the stopwatch. Margaret's voice trembled. Nicholas's eyes narrowed, a flash of intensity crossing his face. But this time, Tiana didn't hesitate. She remembered everything. The courage, the thinking ahead, the empathy, the careful steps she had practiced throughout the night. With one decisive movement, she shifted her weight to the safest marble panel, anchoring herself with shards of crystal and pulling Margaret along. Nicholas braced them both, guiding them through the final stretch of the corridor. Dust and debris rained down, and the mansion groaned and shuddered as if in protest. But Tiana's focus never wavered. Every step was measured, deliberate. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, they reached a section of solid marble. Relief washed over Tiana in waves. She looked around, the danger temporarily behind them. The red glow of the stopwatch dimmed slightly, signaling the end of the most extreme part of the test. Margaret hugged her tightly, tears streaming down her face. "Baby, you did it." You made it through. You survived. Nicholas's stern expression softened. You have proven courage, intelligence, and empathy beyond measure, Tiana. Not only did you survive, but you acted with heart, protecting those around you. That is what true strength looks like. Tiana's chest heaved. Her muscles ached. Her hands were cut and scraped, but a profound sense of pride filled her. She had faced the impossible and survived, not just with courage, but with kindness, with empathy, and with careful thought. Margaret whispered, holding her close. Remember, baby, courage is nothing without heart. And you, my girl, have both. For the first time that night, Tiana allowed herself to breathe fully. The mansion had tested her in every possible way, pushing her to the edge of fear, testing her mind, her body, and her heart. She had emerged stronger, braver, and wiser. Nicholas stepped back, his eyes scanning the corridor one last time. This test is over, for now. But Tiana, remember, true courage is not measured only by survival, but by how you face challenges with empathy and thoughtfulness. You have shown that tonight. Tiana looked at her mother and Nicholas, the adrenaline still coursing through her veins. She realized that survival alone wasn't the goal. It was how she had faced fear, protected others, and made careful choices even in the most extreme circumstances. The mansion was quiet now, but the echoes of its tests lingered. Dust fell from the ceiling like rain, and shards of marble and crystal glimmered in the dim light. Tiana held the stopwatch tightly, the red glow fading as the danger subsided. Margaret hugged her daughter again, whispering, "You've grown so much tonight, baby, so much." Tiana smiled through her exhaustion. She knew this night would stay with her forever. The fear, the adrenaline, the courage, the choices, and the lessons about empathy and strength. She had survived the impossible, and she had done it with her heart intact. As they slowly walked through the corridor, the mansion seemed to settle around them, as if acknowledging her triumph. For Tiana, this was more than survival. It was a lesson in courage, intelligence, and the power of kindness in the face of fear. Thank you for watching. If you found this story engaging, we invite you to share your thoughts in the comments below. Your perspective adds value to the conversation. To stay updated with future stories exploring themes of race, inequality, and the unexpected choices that shape lives, please consider subscribing to this channel. Your support helps us continue creating meaningful and thought-provoking content.